What if I told you that 80% of everything you're doing right now does not matter? Not in your business, not in your goals, and not even in your very own growth. We've been programmed to believe that more effort will undoubtedly mean more success. But that's a myth. In reality, the more you work on, the less you actually get done. So the truth is, you don't need to do more. You need to do less, but better. As Bruce Lee once said, it's not the daily increase, but the daily decrease. Hack away at the unessential. And that's exactly what this video is going to be about. Because success isn't about addition, it's about elimination. And the people who rise to the top with extraordinary success are not the people that tried everything. They're the ones who identify the very few things that move the needle in success and eliminate everything else. Now you're going to want to watch the rest of this video because these are the same exact principles that I've instilled into my life that has allowed me to scale my business past a few $1 million in revenue and have over 5 million subscribers under management inside of my YouTube agency that has allowed me to have a life of freedom. Here's some of the things you're going to learn in this video. The first thing is what the 80-20 rule actually means and why it's not just a theory, it's a psychological law of nature. Number 2, how this rule reveals itself through life and throughout history, from human behavior to world-changing innovation. Number 3, how to find your personal zone of genius. This is that 20% that drives almost all of the results in your life, no matter what direction you're pointed in. And number 4, most importantly, how to duplicate that 20%. Not by copying success, but by replicating the psychology behind it. And by the end, you'll understand how top performers compress decades of work into 1 year, not by working harder, but by working truer. Now, before I dive into point 1, I just want to show you this chart really quick, highlighting how doing less and focusing more stack up against one another. The gray bar is the chaotic effort. This is somebody that's trying to do more than 3 things at any given moment. On the far right, we have the blue chart. This is the focused effort. This person doesn't do more than 2. Primarily, it's only 1. Look at the difference in terms of their results of effectiveness in any given direction. The person who has focused effort only on one thing is able to have 80% effectiveness in that direction. The other person is just at 40. And if we're looking at a scale, 40% is less than 60%. So if you have chaotic effort, chances are you're working against yourself, making it harder for you to succeed. The point of this is that you understand success is not from you having to work harder, but from you having to work smarter. And I know that sounds cliche, work smarter, not harder, but the smartness behind working harder is actually in the simplicity of doing less and doing more of it. Now let's move on to point 1, which is what is the 80-20 rule and why does it actually work? The 80-20 rule, or better yet, where it first came from, was the Pareto principle. Was first discovered by Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto back in 1896. He noticed that 80% of Italy's land was owned by just 20% of its people. It was later proven that this same exact pattern appears in nature, business, and psychology because it reflects how energy distributes itself in complex systems. In neuroscience, it's called neural efficiency. Your brain learns to use energy to achieve more precision. In economics, it's called the law of power, which states small advantages compound into massive disparities. And there's a great quote, and it states, "The greatest mistake in life is to be continually fearing you will make one." This rule works because systems amplify what's already working. Now on YouTube, that means the algorithm doubles down on videos with higher watch time. And I know you've probably heard that before, but continue watching is going to start making a lot more sense in why you don't have the success you want, whether that be in your content creation or in other aspects of your life. For the sake of this video and for the sake of this channel, I believe making better videos starts with making a better you. So we're gonna stick to these laws applied in content creation, but feel free to apply them to any aspect of your life. So with that being said, in business, that means word of mouth doubles down on your best customers. My entire business for all of its longevity has been solely off the backbone of relationships and word of mouth. And 80% of our revenue comes from 20% of our clientele. I want to share this chart with you. This chart is called the power law of results. To the far left, we have cumulative results, and at the bottom, we have input effort. When you look at this chart, you can see from 0 to 20, you had the most parabolic increase in results. After that, there was a diminishing return from the effort given in that input, showing you that the 20% of anything can always make up the 80% of the overall results. So when you stop trying to fix your weaknesses and start feeding your strengths, everything else will compound for you. And psychologically, your dopamine pathways reward progress, not activity. So doing the right 20% keeps you motivated, while doing the wrong 80% makes you feel what everyone loves to say, burnout. Now, how do we apply the 80-20 rule to our life and content creation? Because the 80-20 principle is universal, as I mentioned before. It's not about money or metrics, it's about leverage. In life, 20% of your habits produce 80% of your fulfillment. 20% of your relationships bring in 80% of your joy. And 20% of your decisions determine 80% of your destiny. The Stoics understood this long before Plato ever ran the numbers. And I know that because Seneca wrote, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Every era proves the same truth. Precision changes everything. Now I'm going to tell you a story. This story is from Henry Ford back in 1913. If you don't know who Henry Ford is, if you've seen a Ford out in the streets, that automobile company is founded by him, hence the last name Ford. And this is really going to show you how much the 20% can shine in your life, in your business, in any sector of your existence. So Henry Ford, when he studied his car assembly process, he realized most delays came from just a few bottlenecks. He fixed those 20% and production dropped from 12 hours all the way down to 90 minutes. And since then, that single insight scaled the entire industry. Now, if we translate that to YouTube, when you identify 20% of your videos that drive nearly all of your growth and you focus on those, your entire channel will start to compound. This is the exact thing I've seen happen time in and time out under our clients. They have a few videos that run a significant portion of their monthly traffic, obviously compounding to their annual traffic. Like I said, we have over 5 million subscribers under management, and a large amount of these people that we manage do 2 to 5 million views a month. And some of their videos, when I say some, the 20%, still attribute to a large portion of the monthly metrics. But more importantly, they attributed to that hockey puck curve of growth that they experienced that allowed their channels to break past ceilings of 100K, 10K, 250,000, million subs. We've seen it all, every single benchmark, and it's always just a couple videos out of the 100, out of the 1,000 that they made that pushes them over the edge. So every input you do, if you're a content creator, no matter where you're at, every input you do, if you just study the ones that work well and you learn what's working well inside of them and you learn to duplicate that, I promise you, you will find the recipe to success. I believe luck is negated through inputs, and if you do enough of that, you will find your lucky video that will cause that hockey puck growth, and it'll cause the compounding of your brand. How do we find our 20%? And you know what I call the 20%? I call finding that 20% your zone of genius. You see, your zone of genius is where skill, energy, and demand all intersect, where what you're best at meets what the audience want most. To find it, you need to blend data with introspection. Let me get a little bit granular here. So step one, I want you to look at your YouTube Studio analytics. So open YouTube Studio, go to analytics, go to content, and make sure you're always clicking advanced mode at the top right corner. I want you to sort by click-through rate, because that's one of the most important things. If you increase your click-through rate, you're going to capture more of those impressions. And if you capture more of those impressions, all of a sudden you're building an audience. So sort by click-through rate. Secondly, I want you to sort by average view duration and engagement. Your top 2 videos in those categories are your proof of resonance. Now, step 2, let's look inside of that. So I want you to ask yourself, with the topics you made, which topics allowed you to lose track of time while you were creating them? Where did you feel most alive? Because that is you finding your zone of genius. Modern term, we'll call it the flow state. And if you don't know what the flow state is, this is a zone where challenge and skill meet perfectly. And that's exactly where the 20% lives. And then you have this chart here. So let's say you have 10 videos. The gray videos are your average performing videos and the blue ones are the outlying videos. And I get so sick and tired of everybody trying to copy what everyone else is saying. So even when I say outlier, I promise you, I'm not talking about vidIQ. That's very cliche. Yeah, you could see how many views someone got and try to redo that video, but mastery is not in a form of copying. It's in a form of creating. So when we look at the blue bars that stand out, we want to isolate those two, because out of 10, if 20% drive 80% of the traffic or 100% of the traffic, it's gonna be 2 videos. Once you identify those, you need to move on to the next step, which brings me to point 4, how to duplicate your 20%. The difference is replication versus reduplication. They're completely different. I know they sound the same, but hear me out. Replication means copying the surface. Reduplication means recreating the essence. Replication is mechanical. Reduplication is psychological. When you replicate, you're chasing outcomes. When you reduplicate, you're mastering the principles that cause that very thing to be a hit. Think of it like music. 2 artists can play the same notes, but only one can make you feel something, because one replicates the melody while the other reduplicates the feeling. And I have this chart here. It's copying versus reduplicating. The gray bar is copying and the reduplicating is blue. Yes, copying success is effective, but only at 45 to 50%. Meanwhile, reduplicating, figuring out a new series based off of the backbone, based off of the essence of the very thing that was successful, puts you at a 90% creative effectiveness, which is vastly better than only operating at 45%. So you can copy, which is what everyone else is doing, or you can reduplicate. Why is it good? And learn the questions you need to ask in order to distill and filter through the emotions that you need to recreate on the next video. Not mimicking, but making again, but new. Now, to comb my tangled communication, Carl Jung said it best. Until you make unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When you reduplicate your 20%, you're taking what works subconsciously, the tone, timing, emotion, and bringing it into conscious control. That's how you create predictable virality. Now, I know all of that was a bit dense. I want to give you this to help you isolate exactly what you gathered here today and screenshot it, because I promise you, if you carry this at the forefront of everything that you do and you start auditing the thing you're doing, you're gonna start eliminating more and more. Remember, Bruce Lee said it best, and I said the quote earlier, if you can find what to eliminate, you're going to find what to work on. So here's your recap. First, you learned that effort doesn't equal results. Focus does. Secondly, you saw how the 80-20 governs everything from nature to nations, with the story of Henry Ford, who is still very relevant in today's economics. Third, you learned how to relocate your 20% zone of genius through data and flow. That flow is the intuitive instinct you feel when you dissect something that worked good and you ask yourself those series of questions we talked about. Fourth, you discovered the difference between replicating what works and reduplicating why it works. And the thread through all of it is awareness. When you stop reacting to everything and start responding to the few things that matter, your life and content become asymmetrical. You stop chasing success and you start engineering it. Now, I believe in life, there's no such thing as a take without a give. So if I gave you some insights, knowledge, or inspiration today, I kindly ask to subscribe to this channel, because the people who win on YouTube and in life aren't the ones who do the most. They're the ones who understand why things work and how to repeat them. And there's one thing that I will repeat again, and that will be a message that could potentially help you on your journey finding success in your brand or in your business, because I've been there and I'm still doing it. Thanks for watching.